Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Season 1, Episode 2, The Child. I remember when I was setting up all of the things, because, you know, I've got the spreadsheet right there, which shows which exact episodes we're covering in which order. And I remember as I was going down the list just being weirded out by the episode names of The Mandalorian, because there's The Mandalorian, The Child, The Sin, The Gunslinger, The Prisoner, The Reckoning, The Marshal, The Passenger, The Harris. Harris? That was the Houdini! Alright, sorry. I can't get my voice that high. I used to be able to do that. Something that actually caught me earlier, I wanted to comment on, and I'm just still processing as we go through here. You notice that there's this tidbit where they say that the off the books job has deep pockets. Mandalorian thinks it might be underworld, you know, illegal stuff, because most of what the Bounty Hunters Guild does is actually legal. They are legally ratified to operate. That's why they have a guild and like a whole procedure and like chips and chits and all kinds of fun stuff like that. But no, underworld. Ooh, okay. Well, Mando's obviously clearly considering it, but these aren't underworld. They're Empire or Imperial Remnant, if you prefer. Okay, that makes a degree of sense. But why would he say they have deep pockets? Actually, quite the contrary. The Empire is probably starved for cash right now. But you know what they would have? A bunch of random crap that they've looted off of all the places they evacuated as they were fleeing their worlds and holdings and bases. So it suddenly makes sense for exactly why it is that they have Beskar. And they would pay out the ass for a Force user, and Beskar has tremendous value, so a lot of this lines up, is what I'm trying to say. There's, as much as I have issues with some of the execution of this show, and I don't want to sound like I'm dismissive there, you could tell they were putting some thought behind what's going on behind the scenes, and you could tell how things are lining up pretty neatly. Speaking of which, another thing I noticed, of course they want a living Force user. This is 9 ABY, so they're definitely getting cycled up to the Imperial Remnant eventually devolving into the First Order. And of course they would want a Force user. they would want as many Force sensitives as they could possibly get for whatever reasons they're going after. There's all kinds of reasons they might want Force sensitives, especially since, I don't want to get too spoilery, but they're probably still working on the Snoke program right now. So yeah, going after a baby with a high midichlorian count makes sense for basically every reason. And of course the Doctor guy wants him alive and is in fact chastised when he's like, no, we can bring him in dead. So apparently, because I actually did know about this. Yeah, no kidding, as it is. Apparently this is a practical puppet for Baby Yoda here. A very, very expensive, hard to operate practical puppet. For various obvious reasons, I think that was the right call. The obvious reasons are the obvious reasons, but the non-obvious reasons is there's always going to be a little bit more physicality, believability to the puppetry, right? We've actually talked about this several times throughout the course of many things we've covered over the years. It's just different when there's Frank Oz with a stick showing exactly where his character's eyes are, and when there's freaking Yoda. And yeah, you get natural lighting, you get natural movements. A lot of it is stuff where it's just, you know, it's more real in ways we probably aren't even noticing, right? It's more real in so many different ways that if you're doing CGI, you have to think about how that clothing sits and how it rests and how it moves and how the clothing texture reflects light differently from the skin texture, which reflects light differently with the eyes. You have to always be thinking about where that lighting source is and how it's interacting with them and what shadows are going. Obviously, we've done all this, but it's actually a huge amount of work to try and make a CGI thing work. And the whole time, at least part of your brain is going to be looking at that and thinking, yeah, that's CGI. I actually commented on this very recently. I don't remember if I said this out loud, but you can always tell which shows or movies have really, 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 really good CGI and that it doesn't look like CGI, but that is time-consuming and expensive as hell, which is why most CGI in most movies for the last, honestly, I'd say about 10 years at this point, maybe 11 years, looks like CGI. Is because we've gotten to the point where we can just mass produce CGI stuff that looks good enough. And, well, then we have good enough. You know what I mean? But yeah, by contrast, this puppet impressed the hell out of me. Really. I cannot overpraise it enough. It's actually shocking. It reminds me of the old Henson puppets, if I could be honest. Like, how many of you seen Farscape? I know that sounds like a weird direction to go with that, but if you've seen Farscape, you know immediately where I'm going with this. Because calling those things puppets is honestly a little bit dismissive of how ludicrously advanced and complex those things are. And that's Henson, right? Like, that's the Henson studio. That's what they've been known for since the 70s, arguably. They're very, very good at making extraordinarily believable and realistic puppets. But the cost and consequence of that is, as Hazard has just pointed out, you don't have one person on the puppet there. You've got several. And each one is controlling different aspects and different types of it. And they're all just kind of doing everything that they can to make that as believable as possible. Like, it's not just an expensive puppet itself. It is expensive to operate. But it works. This is actually funny in its own way, because this ties back into the idea we mentioned earlier. Do you want to pay for quality, or do you want to pay for quantity? So, sorry, going off topic, but Baby Yoda, big thumbs up. Not just because it's cute, but because it's cute. Oh, no, I'm not even being facetious there, because obviously it looks adorable, right? Even if it was just sitting there doing its own thing, that's very cute. But what really makes Grogu cute, Baby Yoda, I don't know his name yet, Baby Yoda cute, is his animation. Like, obviously the ears is probably the most overt thing, but even just in the way that he does really little movements. There's this wonderful bit very early on where Mando is trying to fix the injury on his arm, and he picks Baby Yoda back, puts him back in the chair, goes back to fixing his arm, and there's a quick shot of Baby Yoda just goes, hmm? Like, it's the perfect thing. Hmm? And I actually remember just being like, like physically squealing as I was watching, because they do so much with the animation that it adds to the adorability. And that's the value of quality, isn't it? That's the value of putting that time and effort and work into actually having the 4 people on the suit and the backup things and the very expensive puppet. Anyways. So, also, fun anecdote, I wouldn't be surprised, feel free to jump in on this, but I wouldn't be surprised, one of the biggest problems that used to happen over on Farscape is every now and again, and it would not happen often, but every now and again an actor would get just a little bit too physical with one of the puppets, with one of the animatronics on Farscape, and the director and producer would have to come over and say, you realize how expensive this stupid thing is, right? Like, fixing and repairing this thing in some cases means actually replacing it. Please be gentle with the puppets. Holy crap. Anyways, yeah, Larry, David, and Elmo. Yeah, no, it's the same thing. It's the same concept. It's just like I noticed when Pascal, I assume it's Pascal under the outfit, I don't really know. How would I know? It's actually him playing the role. He physically picks up the baby, but you could tell that the actor is being extraordinarily hesitant there. Just like, okay. There we go. Like, he's doing a quick motion, but you can really tell that he is being extremely sensitive with that poor thing. We see a bunch of lizards tailing them, which all stop. And then the music stops. And there's a tiny little detail. Because at one point, he looks to the left and then looks down to the right. Back in the EU, there was a song that was too loud. Back in the EU, there was a thing about Boba Fett's helmet, that actually the inside of the helmet was an extraordinarily complex 360 heads-up display thing, right? With trackers and markers and Iron Man, right? The Iron Man suit. We've seen this visualized nowadays thanks to the MCU. I don't actually know if that ever got ported forward, if we actually had that immigrate into the canon of the AU. But there's several times where he clearly has a tremendous amount of situational awareness, and it wouldn't surprise me if he's still got the heads-up display in there. So there's this nice little tidbit during the fight where there's a very, very brief shot of the flashing light, which we, thanks to the first episode, know means they have a tracker. It means they're tracking Baby Yoda. Okay. Shoves Baby Yoda away. Baby Yoda quickly hides. And then we have a hand-to-hand fight. And, you know, I'd love to praise the fighting and the cinematography, the choreography in this scene, but I'm not a good liar. It's way overly edited. There's a single shot during this thing where the camera bounces essentially into Baby Yoda's crib, his hover crib, and we see the fight being over there, right? And that was a great shot, actually. Something that I praised so much of about Andor, I know, but just bear with me, was that one of the things they were very, very good at was using a combination of audio and visual to try and force the audience into the first-person perspective of a single individual. And who it was changed, right? Sometimes it would be Cassian himself. One time it was Kino. One time they forced ourselves into the perspective of Cyril, you know, stuff like that, right? But this kind of does the opposite. It just bounces all over the place, so we're not actually in anyone's headspace here. But putting it inside the thing there kind of succeeded at the same thing, but only for like half of a second. Now, is this bad? No. But could it be better? So then we see the Sandcrawler and the Jawas salvaging his ship. I gotta be honest, if I was Mando in that moment, first of all, I would absolutely shoot those Jawas. Disintegration shots. Yeah, has to be manually loaded, we notice. So there's your consequence of having those heavy shots. I would be so pissed. Not just because they're stealing my ship, but honestly, if they'd stolen my ship whole scale, I would be less pissed about it. Because then I could just get my ship back. But they are salvaging my ship. Do you know how hard that's going to be to put back together? I'm just staring at that like... And that's assuming I have the engineering know-how to even do that to begin with. It takes a lot less to break a ship down than it does to build one. We also see that this whole sequence is being played almost entirely for laughs. Did you catch that? There's... my Lego! Yeah, no, we actually see in this, it's just... yeah, I mean, do you know how to make your ship? Or do you know how to repair your car, Cashel? Like, I know a few basics. There's this bit where he's crawling up the Sandcrawler, and the Jawas decide to go ram into a rock to kill him and knock him off it. I don't know if that was a deliberate Indiana Jones reference, but that was the first thing that jumped into my mind as soon as they showed that. And it wouldn't surprise me if it was deliberate, because, I mean... right? This whole sequence is almost entirely being played for laughs, though. Literally throwing junk at him and beating him with hand slams and shocks. And when he gets up, they all just shoot him in one thing and he just falls to his thing. And it's like, well, yep, that's cool. This is the humiliation part of the arc. A very common thing in Westerns, actually, where the hero has to be competent, but down on his luck. Then he goes to fight something. He succeeds at the shootout. There's the twist. Back in old Westerns, the twist was usually the beautiful maiden who has won his heart. In this case, it's the beautiful child that has won his heart. Same general slot, same general position. Obviously, the Mandalorian now obviously gives enough of a damn about the child to take care of him. And then he's got to have the humiliation section. So, yeah, okay, I'm with it. A little bit silly, but I am actually with it. And I do enjoy Jawas overall. I kind of wish we could do more with them, but that's neither here nor there. So now he can't leave planet, doesn't have a speeder, can't keep himself fed. Cool. And, yeah, we need more Blizz. As he starts walking over to the Ugnaught spot, I'll talk about that in just a second, I have to comment on two things. First of all, in a similar way to how the IG-11 and the Mandalorian banter worked weirdly well, Baby Yoda and Mando's banter works really well, too. You're probably thinking, they don't talk. Bingo. Neither of them say a single line of dialogue, but they don't need to. Both of them are expressly well animated. I've already praised the puppetry on display several times, but this is also when we see that the Mandalorian himself, assumably Pedro Pascal, actually has to start really working with the body language and really work with the head language in order to actually convey something. And so the two of them play off each other very nicely. And this is our first legitimate breather section, too. So that's actually really good, too. I'm with both of that. But then I got to thinking, Baby Yoda's supposed to be 50 years old, right? This show is set, this season, I should say, is set in 9 ABY. And Order 66 was 19 BBY. So that's 28 years ago. Yeah, no. If that is his actual age, which is a presumption at this point. Yeah, he was 22 during that sequence when Order 66 hit. I'll come back to that later, really. It's something that was striking me as we were doing the breather section here. And then he eats the frog alive, which is weirdly horrifying and cute at the same time. There's a bit where there's like the Ugnaught guy's like, okay, I'm gonna help you out, and it makes perfect sense that he's gonna help him out. He does owe him for taking out the pirate band, so okay, he's gonna go and he's gonna help him broker a deal with the Jawas. Okay, I'm with that. There's this bit where the Mandalorian says, I can't disarm, weapons are a part of my religion. The Jawas, of course, are having none of that. I can't even tell if he's being serious about that. Like, I know the helmet's a thing, but I legitimately am not sure if he meant that. He is still willing to bargain with these people and sit and wait before being called over. And the moment they mention trade, I'm sitting here going, what does he have to trade to them? And the answer is nothing, of course, unless you think of this from the perspective of this being a video game. No, think about it for a second. He has no real materials to his name whatsoever, but what he does have is his services. So you go do this quest for me, and sure, we'll go ahead and help you out. Lo and behold, they happen to have a side quest for him. Go get this egg. Again, this is not me making fun. This actually makes perfect sense. A lot of people make fun of things being video gamey, and those people are stupid. Thinking about a certain Mass Effect 3 developer here. So, okay. We have him be humiliated again, this time by the Rhino. And now I want to talk about editing really quick, because we have the Rhino battle. And I hated the Rhino battle. And I know I'm going to get some hackles for that, but I want to explain. Please don't jump down my throat real quick. Editing in fiction, in any kind of thing, whether you're showing a cutscene, or like a cutscene of a video game, or a shot of an episode, or a shot of a movie. Editing is a tool that must be used very precisely and carefully. But it has to be used with care, otherwise all you're going to have is this nonsense. I decided to rewatch this scene several times, and I started counting. Across 15 seconds, what happens is the Mandalorian gets tossed up out of the hole, pulls up his gun isn't working right, okay. The thing charges him, smashes him into the air, knocks him back, costing him his weapon. 15 seconds, okay? It's actually kind of longer than I thought, because it sure feels like it's going by quickly. Probably because the edits are, Rhino shows up, cut to a shot behind Mando, framing the Rhino, cut to Mando's face as he tries to shoot, which is the first good cut here, cut to a slightly longer shot of the exact same scene, like just the camera zooms out like a good foot as he realizes in disbelief that his gun is jammed. Cut to the Rhino, cut back to Mando, cut to the behind shot, cut to the charge, cut to the impact from the charge, cut to the long shot from the charge, cut to Baby Yoda reacting, that's our second good cut so far, cut to Mando landing, cut to Mando's blaster landing. I was honestly in a little bit of disbelief at the fact that they needed 3 separate edits just to show the Rhino impacting him. Now, you know why. It's the same reason people do this in so many action things. You notice that I'm specifically calling out an action sequence. It's because they had something charge into the actor, and then they were like, all right, cut. And then the shot where he's being tossed is probably 100% CGI, or like at least 90% CGI. And then the shot of him landing is further CGI, and you get it, right? That's the easiest explanation there. I don't even know if it's true, and I don't care, because it doesn't really matter. What matters is cut, 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 cut. Yeah, how many of you have seen the meme? It's not even funny, or rather, it's hysterical, but in a bad way. Have you seen Liam Neeson climbing over a fence with, I don't actually remember the number, but quite a few cuts to get Liam Neeson over a fence? That's what I mean when I say overly edited. That's what I mean when I use that phrase. Is these kind of ridiculous shots of chop 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 chop. It's frustrating, and it completely... I don't know. Maybe this is just the film snob in me. But whenever I see an overly edited shot like this, I'm just like, yeah, okay, wake me when it's done. As it happens, they do wake me when it's done. There's a nice tidbit. So he uses the flamethrower, which does nothing. He uses the grapple, which doesn't do much. I do like how they're still using the kit. One of my favorite things about playing Bounty Hunter back in Tor is the kit and the variety of it. And then Mandalorian is just with a vibroblade. Did you catch the fact that it's actually vibrating? That's a good reference, by the way. It's quiet. It's in the background. They don't draw attention to it. Like, it's not member berries. He's just got a vibroblade. That was actually cool. I liked that. His armor's hanging off of him. And then we cut over... Yeah, excuse me, vibro dagger. Then we cut over to Baby Yoda and his first overt usage of the Force, which is clearly costing him to do. And Mando's expression clearly shows that the Mandalorian understands the significance of this moment, to some extent or another. And like Rax mentioned earlier, there's a mysticality to it. There's just a... Like, even though this is still a terrifying and dangerous throw, the Mandalorian cannot help but pause here. And stuff like this... Oh, I love that too, Cashel. But yeah, good music usage too. Stuff like this is why, as much as I love that there was no Force in Andor, if you're going to have the Force in a show that's more non-Jedi focused, this is a really good way to do that. Precision. Just have this one little scalpel into this scene, right? Just slice right into that moment of whoosh. Because this scene has all of the impact that the show has been lacking to this very point in time. Yeah, you make it count, exactly. And so, yeah, he's just lost and confused and doesn't actually 100% understand. Except, yeah, no, if the Force had showed up in Andor at all, it should have been made a moment where everyone's just like, what? And yeah, this is 9BBY. It's entirely possible that there are still wide swaths of people who have no idea what the Force is at this point. I can only speculate, because this is a big galaxy and it's been a while, but... it also indicates that the Mandalorian is higher tier than Andor, which actually makes perfect sense. The Mandalorian himself is higher tier than most of the individuals over in Andor. Right? I mean, he's just operating at a higher tier level, despite being the down-on-his-luck Western guy. So, I'm with all of this. All of this actually works... pretty well. Yeah, no kidding. So, good scene, good scene. Other than the bad scene, which was immediately before it. And you see why I'm looking at this show and just going, so why do the Jawas even want this stupid egg anyways? Oh, right. So the reason I say that is in my notes, I actually wrote down, why do Jawas even want this stupid egg anyways? And then, like, literally the next scene, they slice the sucker open and... Okay. Gross. So we see that Baby Yoda is sleeping and has been sleeping for quite some time. In fact, based on the montage, he sleeps for several days. This is when I bring up the fact that I did the math earlier. They don't even remove their gloves. Just, Baby Yoda would have been 22 during the events of Order 66 specifically. And would have been 22 or 3, depending, when the Clone Wars actually got started. I bring all this up because I feel like at least a little bit of Baby Yoda's... Yeah, he's born the same year Anakin was. I feel like at least a little bit of Baby Yoda's overall reaction to all this has to be some degree of trauma. You don't get to just stay hidden for the entirety of the Dark Ages, of the dark times of the Galactic Empire, by running around using his Force powers all willy-nilly. So we've got a combination thing going on here, I think. I think we've got trauma from Order 66 and the events thereof. And I think we've got complete lack of practice due to going out of his way to not use the Force, to not be detected during the fairly long period of time in the middle there. There's a lot of question marks there, though. Like, a lot. But I do like how much pieces are already on the table to make us speculate and think, okay. And yeah, we do know that Baby Yoda doesn't talk. But even though they have a runaway line about, you know, oh, different species age at different rates, how extraordinarily messed up would it be if the reason that this 50-year-old is acting this way is not because he's young, you know, relatively for his species, but because he is severely traumatized? Anyways, I mean, Yoda was pretty silly from time to time. So then we have them putting the ship back together. Interesting thing to turn into a montage, but I'm with it. I'm with it. It is shocking how well the Mandalorian knows how to rebuild his ship. I'm not even going to complain about that. I just think it's funny. Mr. Ugnaught guy knowing how to rebuild the ship makes even less sense. Unless you consider a line he says in a minute. See, the Ugnaught guy is really, really helpful. Oh, by the way, if you're wondering why I keep calling him the Ugnaught guy, I actually was paying attention to the subtitles. In the subtitles, he's literally called Ugnaught. That's it. Thanks, game. So why is he so, like, helping with the egg and the barter? Sure. But he owes him for the pirates, but why would he stand around for days helping him to rebuild his ship? Like, that's above and beyond. It's no wonder the Mandalorian offers him money and then a job immediately afterwards. But his response says a lot. I have worked a lifetime to finally be free of servitude. That's probably the best written line in the show so far, right there. That is an entire backstory in one line of dialogue. And that's... You really strongly get the feeling that he fled here when he could, and he enjoys the peace of the valley, the very thing he's valued in both episodes so far. And I'm completely with all of that, so huge thumbs up for him. He has spoken. Off he goes. And now I want to comment on something else really quick here. This will be my last comment for this episode. Anybody else feel like the music choice for this show is odd? Like, not bad. Wrong. And I put some thought into why, and I feel like I put a bit of a finger on why. Yeah, the theme is definitely overused. That's definitely part of it. But the other side of the coin there is, it feels very much like prequel trilogy, music direction. You're probably thinking, but the music in the prequel trilogy is legit, and you're right. But what you're also not thinking about is that the prequel trilogy kind of sucked. And in episode 1 and episode 2, entire scenes rested entirely on the power of the music that's playing during them. Like, even some of the best scenes in episode 1, I'll point to specifically, only really work because of the way they're using the music for the scene. Because the rest of it just isn't there to back it up. Now that makes sense, because the music is now for doing more of the heavy lifting to get the overall scene up to about here. However, when you have some good stuff in the foreground, and you use that style of direction to the music, it gets distracting. It gets to the point where you're starting to notice the music a little bit too much, and it's actually starting to distract you away from what's going on, away from the events on camera. In other words, if I could explain this differently, if you have, you know, the episode 1 music direction with suddenly really, really good, like, visual, cinematography, camera usage, acting, dialogue, lines, I actually think it would detract from the music usage in episode 1, because the music itself is all of a sudden doing heavy lifting for a scene that doesn't need it. Does that make sense? And that's... Hang on. Okay, Rick Berman's dead. And that's the way that they approach music for several scenes in this very show, is they use this level of music pretty consistently. And so when there's not much going on, this works really well, like in the Force usage scene, when they're walking across the desert, during a lot of the transition shots, a lot of those sequences, the music works great. But then there's stuff where a whole bunch of stuff is going on, and it's good. It's good stuff, but the music's still at this level. And now it just pulls me out of it instead of pushing me into it. It's a weird complaint to have, I'll admit, but and it's not like the music is bad. Again, quite the contrary. It's just the music direction is off. Yeah, the final battle of Return of the Jedi is a good example of that. That's a very good example if you don't really need the music there. And yeah, Andor is... I hate to keep pulling up Andor. Andor was extremely precise with its music direction. Not only did it know how to use very quiet, tense, powerful music, but also it knew when to go loud, and it knew when to switch between the two, depending on the specifics of the scene. Andor and Arcane actually both do this. Literally had Yoshi drums. That both of them had the Yoshi drums concept of having the single song with multiple layers to it, depending on which shot they were on, right? It's music direction right there. I feel like if they had approached the music of this show like that, this would have worked really well. As it is, it works really well and then doesn't, and then does, and then doesn't. Anyways, how are we thinking about rating? I do think, without hesitation, that this is I enjoyed this more than the first episode. It really does, Jesse's Mask. Like, I've covered StarCraft 2 at this point in my career, and I have used that many, many times. So I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I can't see red here. I'm sorry. I can't. But what I'm staring at is orange. And I admit I am torn on the matter. Like I said, it is a step up from the first episode, unquestionably. I'm not sure if it's enough of a step up. There is some good stuff here. Baby Yoda is, of course, absolutely adorable. The Ugnaught is fantastic. The Force moment was great. The editing is crap. I pointed out the one scene with, what was that? Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 edits in 15 seconds. But that's only the one scene I bothered to count. They do that all over the place. It's just, ugh. I'm very torn on this, honestly. I really am. Like, it's like right on the border of yellow to orange, I think. So it's either high yellow or low orange, right? Maybe I should just give up and go ahead and start defaulting to just giving pluses and minuses. I've been thinking about doing it for years. I thought about doing it during MLP. Remember when I was covering MLP? Because that was a while ago. I think I'm going to default down to yellow. It's a high yellow, but it is still a yellow. It's still a solid, good episode, which is what yellow means, don't forget. And it does a lot of things right, but it also does quite a few things wrong. And in statement, I suppose. Good stuff, though. Good stuff. And again, my attention is there. I want to see where this is going. I'm also very curious, because the next episode we're covering is Season 1, Episode 3, which is called The Sin. I should see how long this is. The Sin is 32 minutes long. Yeah, we're really hovering around that 32 marker. I'm going to take a very brief break before I start the next episode, so maybe like 40, 45-ish minutes, and we'll be back.